Hello everyone! As promised, I will do a video in English. It's been a while, I have not done that. And so I'm stopping my listening of Rammstein. I actually managed to quote some Rammstein in my next book, which is going to be a novel, hopefully soon out in English. Actually, I wrote it in English. Anyway, so I promised I would do some Q&A in English. I think it's the first one. I will take it. And that was actually one of my last posts on Facebook because before I got banned. So I have some questions that I will read, and I'll get you my answers. So it's on the fly. I have not read them before, so let's see. Now, first question. How do you stock ammunition? How many rounds already in mag? How many mags? And did you use those Fort box with code or K? I know it's a sensitive question to answer, and so on. Salutation. Hi. So ammunition is a big topic, and I mentioned briefly that in my first book, and actually in my second book, which is also going to be out. First book is Survive the Economic Collapse. Second book, we're not yet sure of the title, but it's going to be out. So in French, it's Rue Barbare, highly successful book, and it will come out in English very soon, before the summer. Yet we're not sure about the title. Now, ammunition is a big topic because, first of all, is what kind of ammunition for what kind of guns you have. So obviously, in the book we mentioned, and I mentioned, that you should standardize to not so many different kinds of ammo. Of course, you need different kind of guns for different kind of things. You don't hunt a rabbit with the same rifle that you hunt deer. You don't. So it really depends. Now, then, depending on what you need, the joke is you need as much ammunition as people living around you in a 100-mile radius. So that's obviously a joke, but there's something to it. Is that you need more than you think. I'm talking storage. So basically, in my book, I advise to have around 5,000 to 6,000 rounds per gun that you have. Now, obviously, this is a ballpark figure because some people may say, well, yeah, but it's very easy to store 22 and have 10,000 rounds or 100,000 rounds. Yeah, sure, it doesn't take a lot of place. It's cheap. And whereas, for example, if you have a 50 cal for long-range target precision shooting, let's say, well, you're not going to have 5,000 rounds. That's going to be, first of all, you're never going to use them for that kind of role, and it's very expensive. So obviously that was a ballpark figure, and it's an average. So I was thinking mostly for your handgun, like if you have a 9mm handgun, yeah, store a few, many thousand rounds, like 5,000, 6,000. If you have a long rifle, I don't know, in 5.56 or a 223, or if you have an AK in 7.62 times 39, yeah, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 rounds is too little. I actually think it's too little, but in some countries, where you're allowed to only buy 1,000 rounds per year, in those crazy countries that limit people's freedom to do what they want with their money, especially when regarding weapons and ammo, well, you have to plan ahead, but you need a lot. Now, does that mean that you're going to use that in combat? Let's assume the scenarios where combat will become something that will happen. Probably not. Probably not. And in today's world, and let me answer your in a way your other question is how much. Let's say how many mags do you need to have full at home, for example. Let's say you want to use a gun to defend yourself against the burglar. Well, if you need more than one mag, let's say if you have a Glock 19 with a 17-round mag, if you need more than 17 rounds to defend yourself, you have a really big problem. And I'm not sure that guns can solve that big problem. It means that you have a full gang of people coming home. So then alone, it's going to be tough. So, and it's the same. Like if there is like a civil war or something, and you absolutely need to take your gun and defend yourself and your family right now, if you need more than 2 or 3 30-round mags in your AK or your assault rifle, that is legal, of course, then you have a big problem, because normally you would have time to either load more, or you really have to run away fast, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of bad guys looking after you. So yeah, next to my bedstand in a locked I have a fingerprint lock, so that if a burglar comes at home, I put my hand there, it opens, and I have a revolver. 6 rounds. Actually, yeah, 6 rounds. Another one has 5, but this one has 6 rounds. 6 38 or 6 357. That should be enough for a burglar. First of all, because I expect not to shoot. I expect the burglar to go away. And if he insists, to warn him that I have a gun, and hopefully goes away. And eventually, if he's aggressive and he puts a threat to my life or the life of the people living with me, well, then I'll neutralize him with my gun. And if it happens that 6 bullets are not enough to neutralize him, well, then I need more training. But I do a lot of training, so that should be enough. And my aim is to neutralize. The law asks you to neutralize the aggressor, not to kill. If neutralization of the aggression happens to kill the aggressor, well, tough luck for him, or her, but usually it's a him. So how much ammo do you need? Well, it depends. You see, I don't have a refill for the revolver next to my bed. Of course, I believe that with that revolver, I can access the vault, where I have bigger stuff and more stuff. So I think the having the proper storage is important, both for your guns and your ammo. Having enough magazines that are full for normal operations is okay. And depending, and again, check the laws in your country. In some countries, they have some anal law that says that you cannot have you cannot have magazine pre-stacked. No one is going to check, but be careful of that. And then, of course, usually people say, "Oh, but isn't having magazines fully loaded, isn't that bad for the spring inside?" Usually not. And if you beware of that, well, just put in a 30-round mag, just put 28 rounds. This is what I do usually with my AK mags, especially the older ones, the Soviet ones, the steel ones. The Magpul ones, for example, are fine. How many do you need? Again, if you need to use more than 1 or 2 mags, then you have a much bigger problem than a crime or even the beginning of any civil war. The odds that someone parachutes enemy troops on your town and you need to get everything out immediately and you need to start fighting in the next 2 minutes is really small. It's not for that kind of scenarios that we should prepare. So having 1 or 2 mags full next to your guns in a safe place, that should be enough. Okay? I hope this is not controversial, by the way. I think weapons are just tools, and they are very useful tools to protect yourself. In fact, this is why the police and the army uses them. And if the police and the army uses such tools, well, civilians should as well. And by the way, civilians usually are more trained than the army and police. Now, some of you may not believe that. Check out how many ammos police uses every year and trains with. Most civilians use much more of that training. At least that's what I advise my readers, is to train to really understand. Next question by George. What is your native language, French or Italian? You seem to be super good at French, but you are Italian, aren't you? How does it work? How equally you speak 2 languages at this level? Well, I'm originally Italian. I was born in Italy. My parents are Italian. I spoke Italian at home since I was born. Well, probably since I was 1. And I moved to first Paris and then Switzerland when I was 3. And I went to school in English, in fact, while learning French. And then I switched to the French-speaking school because Geneva is in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. So Italian is my mother tongue. Over time, I think I don't speak it as well as French. or I probably speak it just as well as my English, and with a little accent. When I'm in Italy, people say, "Oh, you have a German accent," which is not sexy. I should have kept the French accent in Italy, and I should have kept the Italian accent when speaking French. I don't have much game, unfortunately. I should work on that. So I'm Swiss. I'm a Swiss citizen as well as Italian citizen. But my main languages are Italian, then French, then English. Although I find that I actually write in English better. It flows easier for me to write in English than in French. It's probably because I read much more in English than any other language. I do speak a little bit of Spanish. Hablo un poquitito español, pero no está muy bueno. Und ein bisschen Deutsch, aber es ist sehr schlecht. So, ich kann verstanden und ich kann überleben in Deutschland oder im Deutsch sprechen Landen, aber es ist sehr schlecht. So my German is pretty bad. What's interesting is I pick a little bit of languages wherever I go. So when I go to, I'd say Romania, I say Bună ziua, mulțumesc, la revedere. I can speak a few, and I can say hi, how are you doing, hello, wanna fuck, in about 50 languages. That helps. But that's because of my travels across the world and work. Okay. I wish I know Russian. I wish I know other languages. I can get 5 or 6 words in Polish, in Czech, in Portuguese. Portuguese is easy to read. I can read Portuguese. Okay. Is it reliable to buy gold stored in Switzerland through a company? Well, it depends which company. And I know some which are reliable. If you want, just get me know. And they start with low amounts of money, so that's all right. I would advise still people to keep the gold that they buy or precious metals in their house or in safe places that they manage. Not that I don't trust either banks or these storage companies, but if you need it fast, you need it fast. So perhaps long term you want to keep them in your house, and so that wants to push you to keep any precious metals in a safe place that you can manage, that you can own. Okay. Let me go down. There were some funny questions. Yeah, this one by Claude. When war is coming, all men can feel it coming, and they are mentally preparing themselves. And they do not feel so much sexual appetite because they are focused on war. And then they build a killer mindset. Do you agree? Well, let me say that most people don't feel war coming, even today. I mean, today it's like just as big as it was in 1939 or in early 1914. And yet, it did happen, and most people never prepare. Most people will not prepare. Most people vision goes as far as what they're going to do Friday and Saturday night, and what they're going to buy on their next shopping spree. That's where most people horizon is. It's 2-3 days maximum. What are they going to do end of the week? Maybe what are they going to do for holidays? Are they going to fly to some cheapo place to dance, have fun? Most people these days are incredibly short-sighted. Now, you ask these questions because you are, first of all, one of the smart ones and one of the people who is enlightened in a way, who has understood that things are really bad right now and there are dangers and risks. Most people don't, because most people never experienced any risk or any dangerous or bad situation over their life, because they've been taken care of by the state, through the schools, through the media, and this concept of these precious snowflakes that young people are these days. Is that people, our great grandparents had to go in the trenches and it was a stupid idea, by the way. And as they believed they were fighting for their land and their freedom. And then people had to fight again for, preserving their land and what they've been told to be their freedoms and so on. And they could lose life, of course. They could lose their limb. They could see bombers destroying their family back home, or they could be bombed themselves. They could lose a limb. They could have had their face blown off and then live in pain for the rest of their lives. People went through economic crises and collapses without unemployment packages, without any sorts of savings or government help. And life was tough, and you would go hungry. You would go hungry for days, and before you would eat. And people had this experience since they were kids. After World War II, thanks to the liberal system, in fact, and by liberal I mean the economic liberal system, not the liberals as in the US, the left, not the left. It's kind of leftist, but because of the free entrepreneurship and of course cheap resources, there was so much plenty of food and resources that states have become nannies and help out anyone, deserving or not, in need or not. So you never feel hunger or pain anymore. You never go to war. I mean, there's been people going to Vietnam and to Iraq, but as far as Europeans and Americans, it's a tiny minority, in fact. So we don't know that anymore. And the newer generation, the vast majority, they're out of single mother environment where, single mothers never say no to them because mothers never say no. There's no fathers who would say, traditionally, they would put limits. So all the new generations, they're completely clueless and they don't know what suffering is, and yet they realize that the future is not going to be bright. So no wonder they go into drugs and depression and suicide. It's very bad. Now, as for sexual appetite, actually the experience of psychologists, I've read a lot into that. The experience of psychologists show that when there is danger, your sexual appetite is actually quite high. Sexual arousal when you fear for your life is actually super high. There is this kind of instinct of life, of preservation that says, well, okay, I may die very soon, so I'd really fuck so that I can reproduce myself. And actually, it pushes men and women to be quite sexually aroused during war times. And all the stories, now, of course, beyond a certain weakness, let's say if you lack food, when you pass a certain weakness point, then you will not have the physical ability to have arousal because your body will not be able to produce the chemicals necessary, the hormones necessary to get you aroused. But unless you get to that point of starvation, which is really, it's a survival mechanism, before that, actually sexual arousal is quite high. You actually have stories of people during the wars, in sieges, when they have, when of course you need the presence of women. I mean, if you have a trench with 200 men, if you have a company of 200 men being shelled by the enemy, they're not going to fuck each other. I mean, they're not going to be aroused because they're only men together. I mean, there might be one or two guys who are, but that's not how it works. However, if you have presence of women, and if you are in an intimate context, of course you're not gonna rape anyone just because you feel aroused. I mean, you still have the boundaries of social and education and the context. But let's say if you survive a bombing by let's say an American wave of bombers has destroyed your German city, when you get out of the shelters and you feel alive, a lot of people wanted to fuck, and there some of the social boundaries relax a bit. So the woman who was at home and her husband was at the front, well, suddenly she will fuck with her neighbor, who's maybe a bit younger or a bit older than her, and in normal times she would not have looked at him, but suddenly she has this urge of life. She needs this pulsion of life, and it's quite common. You see this quite a lot. So yeah, not only you may get killed, but they will fuck your woman, or the other way around. You never know. Tabib asked a question. The economic collapse you talked about in your book, Surviving the Economic Collapse, is not following the trend you highlighted. Apart from these, what are your views regarding present scenario of the Middle East, and also shed some light on the effect of Venezuela crisis on the global world? Well, actually, I think my trends are happening, except that, of course, the timing is always difficult, and it could be that I'm wrong by 1 or 2 years, but it could be that I'm still on time, in the sense that the depletion, the growth of population, the depletion of resources is still here, is still to be felt. Now, perhaps, and that is probably one accurate critic one could do for my book, is that I expected resource prices going up as they get depleted. Well, I discovered that economically, it's not always the case. Sometimes resource prices actually keep dropping while the resource gets depleted. It's actually quite peculiar. I suggest you check conferences by I think it's Jean-Claude Jancovici. He's a French guy. He explains that pretty convincingly. I don't agree with everything he says, but some of the things he says are very smart, and that's an interesting explanation. So he explains why you could have prices dropping as resource decrease, because the demand also decreases. Now, Middle East is I voiced my opinion of the Middle East quite a lot. I think, the Middle East has been a basket case for a long time, and we should never have took the Ottomans away from the control of the Middle East. There are still cultures who require strong men to manage the people. Of course, we all know that the big destabilization factor has been the creation of Israel. Because it gives it gives the excuse to many of the surrounding countries to blame everything on the Zionists. If prices go up, if your dig doesn't get hard, it's the Zionist fault. The other element is that it created a wave of refugees, Palestinians, who destabilized first of all Jordan, and then Lebanon, and now Syria, and of course Israel, knows that the best defense is offense, because it's not going to invade these countries. Israel is destabilizing all of the countries around them. Now, with perhaps the exception of Jordan and Egypt, and the effect of that has been disastrous on Iraq. And you have to add into this, the different religious sects that exist. You have Sunnis, you have Shias, you have Yazidis, you have even Sufis, you have Coptic and Maronite Christians. You have a lot of religions in that area, which makes it very, very difficult. And of course, you have oil, which invites so much attention from benevolent powers like the United States, who are going to do everything to keep that oil or prevent it to get to competitors like China and so on. So, what's going to happen in the Middle East? Well, I do not believe that, for example, Israel wants to have physical expansion. I don't, I've checked the plan, Yinon plan, which is a classic plan of expansion to create strategic depth for defense. I don't believe, what does strategic depth mean today when you have intercontinental ballistic missiles or nuclear missiles launched by submarine? Iran starts to have a submarine fleet that is consequential, and Israel as well. Israel can nuke any place in the world now, because it has submarine launched cruise missiles, and that these can have nuclear warheads. So in this kind of world, strategic depth means nothing, because you're never going to have Israeli settlers, I don't know, colonizing Syria or Jordan or the Sinai again to do what in the desert? It's too expensive, too complicated. So I don't see that ambition happening. I think Israel is becoming, in fact, slowly, a more reasonable country. I think it's less scared about its survival, even if they sometimes, you know, do their show at the UN saying, "Oh, Iran will have nuclear bombs. Oh, it's dangerous." Of course not. It's not dangerous. And look, I wish Iran does not have nuclear bombs. I wish actually Israel wouldn't have nuclear bombs. But but certainly I think the scaremongering is not real anymore. No one is going to attack Israel. I mean, no one is mad to this point, and Israel knows that. So I think Israel is becoming. I mean, nothing. It's not all pink. The future is not necessarily perfect for Israel because they have energy issues. They have issues with still diplomacy, and I'm not sure that their kind of informal alliance they have with the Saudis is actually going to be good long term because the Saudis are going to collapse sooner or later, and I don't know in what shape or form, but it's not going to last. As of Egypt, I'll let you know. I'm going there in a week. I'll let you know how it has developed. Venezuela. Well, I don't think Venezuela will have, first of all, a big impact in the world. But on Venezuela, I'll say two things. First of all, it's another show of the fantastic results of socialism. Socialism never works. Now, should that be a reason for the US to intervene in Venezuela and to meddle in their internal politics? No. People should be able to say, well, yeah, look, we made the choice, and for a while it made sense to have Chavez and to have some socialism because we went too far into some crony capitalism, which is not capitalism, in fact, but still. But now we went too far on the socialist part. We need to balance it a bit, and we need to allow people to have freedom. And in many ways, by the way, Venezuelans today have more freedom than a lot of Europeans and Americans. However, it's still a socialist economic system which never works. So it's time for change. It's time for Venezuelan people to be sovereign and be free, but not through intervention of an empire. America should stay at home. Of course, there's a lot of oil in Venezuela, and America probably wants that oil, or at least want to prevent that oil to be used by China. I still actually do not believe the news that America is a net exporter of oil. I think it's bullshit. And we will know in the future that it was bullshit news. But so they are telling that now. And therefore preventing Venezuela oil to be available on the markets will make the prices be higher, perhaps. And that is something that America would like to. I don't believe that. I feel my gut feeling is that this is all bullshit, but we'll know in a few months. For the moment, Venezuela is in an economic collapse. So a lot of the things I've written are actually happening, and they are happening not necessarily slower than I expected. Look at the chaos in France with the yellow vest. This is something that I expected not as fast as now, and yet it's happening. So, I think I got it right. Then that's a question about something else, about China. That I made a video on China. I should do it in English. Some people send me links. That's a funny question. What will it take to kill all Antifa worldwide? Reality. When these people, which are all sons and daughters of rich people, when they'll have to work for real, when they'll end up with living or being next to the people they've immigrated into their country, they'll learn very fast. So I think it's a political hobby for these young people that is going to disappear when they face reality. Whether the reality is work, or when it's the sharp blade of one of the people they invited in our countries. I will not be around to see them die. So that's okay. I wish them luck. What do you expect to happen after the American presidential election? So I'm presuming you're talking 2020. Well, first of all, I actually have no idea what's going to happen because it depends on who gets elected. Now, this is would be a long thing to talk about Trump. Trump has been, in a way, disappointing, but in a way, is still the best president America has ever had, because remember the alternative was mad Hillary Clinton, and that would have meant nuclear war. So whatever lacking Trump has, and we can certainly regret that he has not fought illegal immigration and that he has changed his mind on so many topics, and also because he's not been so competent. We have to remember that he's a Superman compared to Obama or Bush or Clinton before. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he is incredibly more efficient and capable. However, yeah, we hoped a lot about him, and he has probably had to do a lot of compromises. He had promised to leave Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. They haven't. He had promised, not to create any more wars. They're on the brink of fighting in Venezuela. He had promised to build the wall. It's not done yet. He had promised a lot of things that haven't happened. Politics must be really a shitty job, and draining the swamp not only is dangerous, but it seems to be very difficult. Now, I've been following recently. There were a few stories that I counted on Trump, and I had some info on some massive Trump legal action by the Department of Justice against pedophile rings in America and elsewhere. And in fact, there were huge amounts of proof and files on the activities of pedophiles organizations that actually blackmailed politicians and officials in the US and in the industry to get financial and political advantages. So we're not talking pedophile as fucking children, but certainly it was with sex with underage people. So there is a difference between some people having sex with a 5-year-old or with a 15-year-old. Now, one is worse, right? But both are illegal. And for example, in Florida, having sex with a girl who is 15, even if she looks 25, and even if she has fake ID that says she's 25, if she's 15, you go to jail. And yet, some of these rings leaders did not go for jail. So why? What's happening? So I expected, and there were some revelations towards that with in the last 2 years that Trump had done a lot to fight against this, and yet we don't see the results yet. So was it delayed? Did something happen? Was there threats? These people are very powerful, and it's used for political. Let's say you are a foreign country, you want to frame politicians with such stories, and you have pictures and videos of them doing these horrible acts, and then you blackmail them into getting advantages. It's a very old game, but I expected this to blow, and it hasn't. So, do you know a profitable company that uses democracy to govern itself? No. But in fact, the more I grow older, the more I start to feel that democracy doesn't work. And that whenever people blame capitalism, in fact, it's democracy that fucks up. Let's face it, most people are not even able to wipe their own ass. So you want to give them political power through vote? It's complicated. And on the other side, when you have democracy, people, cunning and ruthless people will promise lots of stuff to get in power and grow the government and grow the power. And gullible people will always fall for the trick, and they have no memories. They don't remember the lies that have been sold the previous electoral cycle. So it's really tough. So that was it for the questions in English this time. Check out my. I'm not that much on Facebook anymore because I get censored all the time. So if you have more questions, check out on VK on my other social networks, and let me know if you have more questions. And It will be a pleasure to do this maybe once or twice a year. Take care. Ciao.